Heavy Intercessors are the most common form of Gravis armor-wearing Space Marines. Of course, this armor offers superior armor and protection, but also slows the user down considerably in exchange. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling. Today we're doing a video remake on the Heavy Intercessors, of course because they got a rather large buff in their last rules pass that made them significantly more dangerous. Heavy Intercessors come in at 110 points for 5 or 220 for 10. They move 5 inches, they're toughness 6 with a 3+ save, 3 wounds, leadership 6+, and OC 2. For just a little over 20 points per model, these guys are very tough, especially to small arms, and their special rule plays into that furthermore. They are also quite resilient to things like heavy bolters and strength 5 weaponry in general. In terms of ranged weapons, the heavy bolt rifle is assault and heavy with 30-inch range. 2 attacks, hit on 3s at strength 5 AP 1 and the big damage 2. This was the main buff to these guys when they got it, and this is certainly very nice. It makes them far more savage at lighting up enemy Space Marines and infantry in general. Things like Orc Knobs come to mind. The Heavy Bolter is an exchangeable option, which has heavy assault and sustained hits 1, 36-inch range with 3 attacks, hit on 3s, at strength 5 AP 1 and damage 2. This also got bumped to hit on 3s instead of 4s. And the Bolt Pistol is 1 attack that hits on 3s at 12-inch range with strength 4 AP 0 damage 1. Nothing special, but useful enough if you're tied in combat. And the Close Combat Weapon is 3 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 4 AP 0 and damage 1. Again, nothing special, but good for bullying light infantry. Their ability is unyielding in the face of the foe. While in range of an objective marker you control, each time an attack is allocated to a model in this unit, if the damage characteristic of that attack is 1, add 1 to any saving throws for that model. So things like power swords or accursed weapons become much less effective, and chain swords lose almost all of their efficacy against these guys. This also stacks with cover, which makes them very, very resilient, just in general, like getting rid of a lot of enemy AP. In terms of the unit comp, it's fairly standard: 1 sergeant, 49 aggressors. Everyone's got a heavy bolt rifle, bolt pistol, and close combat weapon. They do have the grenades keyword and gravis. And for every 5 models in this unit, 1 model may replace its heavy bolt rifle with 1 heavy bolter, which I'd say is generally worth it, not just because it looks cool, but it's also very handy. Extra attacks. The Captain in Gravis, with his stock build as a buffing option, brings some nice shooting to the board with the bolt rifle and power sword, and he does bring some decent melee for a unit if you want to bring the multi-part version. The Biologist gives them lethal hits, which is very nice, especially with their damage too, and it's especially handy if you're playing a Divergent chapter where you don't have as easy access to +1 to wound. Torgarodon is just in general pretty much a monster of a character. Ignores cover is nice for the AP1 bolt rifles and heavy bolter, and his own damage actually makes them into a very effective anti-vehicle hunting unit, mainly just off of the weight of attacks and Torgarodon's own damage. Ironfather Pharaohs is pretty insane, because he gives him a 5+ feel no pain, and also bumps him to OC3 while also having a very powerful Forge Bolter. He's definitely one of the best buffing options for these guys, just because a huge unit would be so tough to chew through. Then Marnius Kalngar is just a melee monster. Probably not his best place here, but if you do just want power and speed, he's the winner as he lets you advance and charge. And since he has so much melee, he does turn the unit from a bullying unit into something that can quite competently fight a lot of targets in the game because of how many attacks they bring. Moving on to detachments, we of course have to start off with everyone's favorite, Gladius. They can get extra AP and ignores cover from Storm of Fire, and advance and charge is handy for bullying enemy units. Anvil Siege Force gives you +1 to wound if you're standing still, which is certainly nice, but it is slightly redundant for big units when you're playing in the when you just attack the Oath of Moment. And then Iron Storm, they don't benefit much from it themselves. However, they do make a huge beefy wall for your tanks to keep them nice and safe. In terms of Firestorm, they can get extra strength, which is always good, very helpful against toughness 5 and 6 infantry. Stormlance gives you advance and charge, which is decent enough for bullying things like guardsmen, and they can get sustained hits for a command point, which is definitely very good. Vanguard gives you cover at range, which is very nice, as these guys are already quite tough. And if you have Ironfather Pharaohs here, you'd have a very, very tough unit. They aren't veterans, so they don't get anything from First Company Task Force, but they are battle lines, so you can have something like an Inquisitor join them, and since the Inquisitor has the Psychic keyword and gives it to the entire squad, they would then become Adeptus Astartes Psyker and would benefit from, speed, rerolls, or -1 strength, or any of the other buffs from Librarius Conclave, which is a little cheesy, but I just wanted to mention it. In terms of detachments, Dark Angels, they don't have Deathwing or Ravenwing, though they will be tough enough that firing back with them could be worth it in Unforgiven Task Force. Black Templars, they get a Feel No Pain or an Invulnerable save from one of their two detachments, or from either of their detachments. Their melee isn't too hot, but they can clear infantry at range to let the Crusaders and Sword Brethren get to the hard-to-reach enemies much easier. In Blood Angels with Liberator Assault Group, they actually become a competent enough melee unit, especially for bullying light infantry and hordes, just because of the strength and extra attacks. Space Wolves can give them a Feel No Pain again, and the melee buffs don't go very far on them, but they still do appreciate it when these guys do end up in melee, as they are likely to be near the front of the line if they're taking midfield objectives and not just camping. In terms of competitions, it's really just the other two Intercessors. The normal Intercessors are cheaper, a little bit faster, and their volume attacks does make them more akin to clearing hordes, though I'd say in general their damage balances out. You have more attacks or less attacks of more quality. I think the two actually work quite well together. Having a trifecta of Intercessors doesn't even seem that far out of possibility, because they can sticky any objective that the heavy Intercessors will then defend. And then for Assault Intercessors, of course, these guys love to charge forward, and their melee is quite solid, though they could definitely struggle against tougher infantry, so having a squad of heavy Intercessors whittle them down so they can finish them off is very useful. And of course, the Assault Intercessors act as a screen for the heavy Intercessors, keeping them safe from enemy infantry that could charge them, which would be very bad, as they definitely want to be shooting all those big heavy bolt weapons. Again, these guys I'd say aren't necessarily directly competing. I think they can work together, though they all sort of do the same thing of taking objectives. I'd say the heavy Intercessors just take the edge in the most ranged damage, and also, of course, being the toughest. Even though they are the priciest, their durability rules and stat line just lends itself very well to being very tough to a lot of weapons. They will require dedicated anti-vehicle firepower to really take them down effectively, and they're cheap enough that that's really not too much of a harm, because they will not be shooting at more important things. Heavy Intercessors are Intercessors to their core. They're your grunts, but they are definitely some of the best grunts you could have. Their damage is very, very good, especially just for an objective main unit. And if you're attacking the Oath of Moment target, even if it is a vehicle that's like Toughness 10, they'll definitely chip a few wounds. And if it is below Toughness 10, they can turn targets into Swiss cheese very, very effectively. And while they, of course, aren't Gravis armor, so they would initially be very slow, since they have Assault, and they don't really want to charge that much, advancing with them is pretty free. Anytime that you're not going to be jumping on a Imperial Guard squad or something, you can pretty easily just have them advance to get the extra movement. Their damage, again, as I mentioned, is very good at killing things like Space Marines, Orc Knobs, Orcs in general. So just keep that in mind. They're very high damage, high durability for troops, and honestly their damage can't go very far if you bring something like a Biologist for those lethal hits, or if you bring Tor Garradon for his anti-tank damage. Overall, they're quite a useful utility unit that just does their job perfectly well, which at that point, what more could I ask for? Love heavy Intercessors, and also they look pretty cool. Anyways, I've been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.